Welcome to Darkly Lit, a monthly podcast where we delve into the insane asylum of the literary mind. I am your host, Kayla Berry.
And I am Sade, host of The Witching Hour.
I'm David, and Einstein was wrong. I'm the speed of light, cracking through shivery atoms, and God, the sky swirls and withers like a melting rainbow.
So, if you haven't guessed by David's little outbreak there,
he hasn't taken his meds yet.
Exactly. David, we need...
No room! No room! No room!
No! We need to take him back to Arkham.
But that's just the thing, Kayla. You're already in Arkham.
So we've just read Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious earth by Grant Morse. And this is our final graphic novel out of our trio of graphic novels.
Took us a long time to get to all three of them, but yeah, we're finally here.
So what do you guys think?
We're gonna get right off the bat. What do you think?
Right off the bat. Well, I was looking forward to this.
Right off the bat, get it? Yeah.
I guess, okay, maybe we should start with the summary. David, why don't you give a summary?
Oh, I have to summarize. That's right. Okay. Trying to summarize this one is very difficult because I'll say it right off the bat. This is a very symbolic and surreal Batman story, but it is a Batman story. The best way I can sum it up is we jump between two different stories throughout the graphic novel. The first one we get is in the past, where we get the journals of Amadeus Arkham, the man who founded Arkham Asylum, and we learn a bit about his childhood, about how he was traumatized by the mental illness his single mother or his widowed mother went through, and how he had to deal with it alone, as well as him opening the asylum after his mother commits suicide and bringing his wife and daughter to live there, only to face more tragedy when one of his patients violates and murders them. And we intercut between Arkham's story and a story in the present on April 1st, where Batman is called to Arkham Asylum to deal with a hostage situation. It seems the Joker and many of Arkham's most infamous inmates have broken out, but instead of escaping, they've taken over the asylum, and they refuse to let the hostages go until Batman comes into the asylum with them. And thus ensues a spiral of madness and strangeness and surreality and beautiful, beautiful Dave McKean illustrations.
Okay, before we delve into that, we should also explain, for those of you who don't know who Batman is...
Oh, come on.
The small few of you that don't know...
Everybody knows who Batman is.
I think anyone who's probably listening to this knows who Batman is.
I hope
Yeah, if you don't know who Batman is, he's a man and he dresses up as a bat and he fights crime. That's really... all you need to know.
He's a superhero. Comics from 1930.
Created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane.
Thank you. And Arkham Asylum is the asylum that the bad guys that Batman fights usually gets thrown into. So. And
the Joker is a clown, but he's a scary clown.
This is... I think what makes this one different from the other stories we read is this actually comes from another source material. Like the others, with the others, it's always been like...
The others were like original to their authors. This is part of an established
universe.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the interesting thing to me about it is it's such a departure from what Batman kind of was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is, I mean, if you look at the cover, you look at the illustrations, and you think about the way the story is. This is a psychological horror story that happens to use Batman as its framing device, and that's why I love it. It's very cool. It's great to see very surreal, very dark, and very macabre variations of all this stuff we know about Batman. So we don't just get the Joker. We get this crazy, nightmarish, kind of like creepy sexual Joker, like just the way he talks to people, and he's like really pushy, and it's like it. Well, I mean, we'll get into that.
Very handsy.
Very
handsy. Loosen up, tight ass. He straight up slapped Batman's ass at one point. Yeah, Gracie, I know.
Yeah, our dog is very talkative right now.
She's got a lot to say.
She sure does.
Very passionate about Batman.
Yeah.
What are your guys' history with Batman, like growing up? Before we delve into this a little bit more, just to get an idea.
Well, like many, I grew up watching the animated series, and that's probably where my biggest love for Batman came. When I got older, I started reading some of the comics. There's a lot of the comics that I haven't read. I have a great love for all the Robins. Do not get me started on Damian Wayne.
Is that why people have been sending you unsolicited dick pics?
Yeah.
But they're all pictures of Dick Grayson as Nightwing?
Then Christian Bale was a fan of Christian Bale, and one day I'll tell the story how I kind of followed him around Disneyland. But then obviously he played Batman, and I was super stoked for that, and that was cool. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. I made a few Jason Todd dolls once too, plush toys. Anyway,
nice.
That's as Red Hood or as
Red
Rob?
Hood? Yeah, as Red Hood.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
My actually introduction was the movies. Like, I was allowed to watch. Yeah, I was allowed to watch scare. I was actually allowed to watch like rated R films and stuff like that as a kid. Strangely enough, so the Batman movies were definitely films that were played in our house. But from there, I went from the Batman movies to the animated series, and from there went on to I read a couple of the comics and just all around started to like really enjoy Batman as a whole, especially, and the villains are probably the most interesting part of the Batman canon. I'm not gonna lie.
I have a lot of love for the Batman villains. I think
of all the only I've said it before on other shows, but I think the only rogues gallery that I think remotely compares to Batman's is maybe Spider-Man's. And even then, I can name off the top of my head, there's Dr. Octopus, the Green Goblin, Scorpion, the Lizard, the Vulture. But then you go to Batman. Oh, Batman's easy. Penguin, Two-Face, Scarecrow, Joker, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Clayface, Mr. Freeze.
The list just goes on.
Mad Hatter, Maxie Zeus, Killer Croc.
Yeah, Killer Croc. Like, the list just goes on, guys.
And they're all memorable in their own way.
And they're all fantastic.
And the cool thing is, a good chunk of them are in this one. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I would be shocked if there was the villains didn't take center stage in this one, if they didn't, because this is about where they live, basically. Arkham is basically their home.
The weird part about this comic, I found the background story behind Dr. Arkham much more fascinating than I did the actual Batman story.
I have to agree. Real quick, I will say that much like everybody else here, my introduction to Batman was through the animated series.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The animated series was incredibly formative. I think it still holds up as one of the best, one of my personal favorite interpretations of Batman and that Batman universe. It was only later that I kind of got exposed to the Batman movies, but my love for Batman stems from that series. And more recently, what's kind of cool to talk about, and we'll talk about it later, is I only got into the graphic novels and stuff later. Arkham was one of my first purchases, and it just stuck with me ever since then. I've read a few since then, but none had the same sort of impact that this one did on me as a teenager. So. Yeah, Gracie. That's Gracie's history with Batman. But yeah, so Amadeus Arkham. Let's why don't we talk about Arkham? Why don't we break it down into sort of backstory? So we can talk about the Arkham story first. There's parallels to each story. Yeah. They like cross-reference each other because there's one thing I will say right off the bat is there's some versions of this. I have the 15th anniversary edition that actually has Grant Morrison's original script in the back of it, where you can read his notes, you can read like all the differences. There was a lot he wrote that didn't make its way into the graphic novel, and some things that he described in lavish detail that could be illustrated. That Dave McKean, famously, if you know the Sandman graphic novels, Dave McKean did the cover art and a lot of the illustrations for those, as well as he's worked closely with Neil Gaiman on things like Mr. Punch. Dave McKean did everything, I think, far even more impressionistically than Grant Morrison intended. because again, there's a lot of like sort of little things that didn't work their way in. And Dave McKean chose to make things, I think, even more surreal than even Grant Morrison was intending. But the interesting thing from the script is that he knew Dave McKean was going to do the illustrations early on and gave him little like suggestions by name. You'll see throughout. Dave, what do you think of doing this bit in there? To give one reference of something that didn't make its way into the final script, and since you mentioned your love of Robin, Dave.
Yes.
Grant Morrison had plans at one point to work Robin into the story.
Dang it.
He was going to be with Commissioner Gordon, and they were going to be helping Batman from the outside. Robin was going to be actually doing detective work and figuring out how to, the history of the house and on Amadeus Arkham, and it was going to tie in a little more. Dave McKean flat out refused to draw Robin, because he said he felt like his artistic integrity had already been compromised by drawing Batman. So he wasn't going to draw, as Joker once described it, a cute, long-legged boy in green shorts.
I do feel like reading this, I didn't miss Robin. I think story-wise it was good to cut him out. Mm-hmm. So
I think so too. Although one interesting note is Grant Morrison actually mentions that he has that line about, how's the boy Wonder started shaving yet? He says that to Batman at one point. And he said around this time, and this is like in the late 80s that this came out. He said around this time, DC voters might have voted to kill off Robin, but the line should still be relevant no matter what. And I thought, oh yeah, this is when they killed Jason Todd off.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Boy.
But I'm sorry, but yeah, the point I was going to make though is like the whole thing. We could do it you could describe it in a linear fashion, but the whole thing is a twisting metaphor of different things that Grant Morrison wanted to get across. He makes it clear right from the get-go, and I'll even go back to the notes and reference this, that he's trying to really get across certain symbols and certain ideas, and the story references them in various ways again and again and again. And there's a very just sort of magical realism logic to the whole thing. So keep that in mind, even as we maybe look at each of the backstories in particular. And I thought, kind of like you were saying, Kayla, we could start with the story of Amadeus Arkham.
Yeah, because I'm not going to lie. For me, I know you adored the book. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. Mm-hmm. But the main reason why is it feels like it doesn't want to be a Batman story. It feels like it wants to be its own story, or at least that's what it came across to me. So when it did come to the parts with Amadeus Arkham, those were the fascinating parts, because it's like the imagery and what he's going through and the decisions he makes. It's its own thing. Mm-hmm. But then when it gets to the Batman part, it feels like it just... the story is very I guess. I don't know. For me, for example, you look at Harvey Dent, and I mean that's fascinating that how they're trying to fix him, and you realize, oh, this asylum is not doing a good job, even though you can kind of get it. But if you look at how Two-Face looks, it's not. It's creepy. He's creepy, but it's not as strong as I don't know. When I went with Amadeus Arkham, I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. I feel like this is like an unreliable narrator. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh my God, he's like wearing his mother's clothing, and you realize, oh my God, spoilers. He's like, he kills his mom who has mental issues. Like, oh my gosh. It's just a great twist and turn and I think when you mention how Dave McKean says he's ruining his integrity just by drawing Batman, I feel like maybe that could be kind of why. The Batman's parts aren't as... I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Oh, Batman is very in his parts. Batman is just kind of a shadow. He's there. He doesn't have any real form or substance to him. He's a very mythic figure. He doesn't really have a huge amount of personality, except for the points where he gets riled up by other characters like the Joker. Again, the part that sticks out to me is when the Joker grabs his ass, mm-hmm. which and that's the one time we see Batman really break. And there's a really cool note about that. And Grant Morrison says that the way he imagined Batman in this is that here's someone who's built himself up as this fortress, but deep down he's still a psychologically damaged little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is he's someone who was stunted to the point where he doesn't understand normal human relationships, including sexual relationships. So when Joker does that, it literally collapses, like goes through all his defenses and strikes to a core. And that's the way Joker gets to Batman, is by playing this, like, you know, this very sexual character, because he's studied by Batman psychology that much. Again, Grant Morrison's ideas, and it's interesting. I do. Well, I mean, we can talk about that when we get to the Batman part, but I do want to talk about Arkham.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. I agree to the extent that I think parts of the Batman story are cool, but they're not, like, there's parts of it feels like it just kind of peters off at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Batman just kind of does some stuff, and then, like, stuff happens. I am much more interested in how it's couched in the journal of Amadeus Arkham, and that sometimes parts of Arkham's story bleed into Batman's story. So with Arkham, it feels very true. It feels Lovecraftian a little bit, right? Like the whole idea of madness and the eeriness of the house. I love how haunting it all feels. You know, my dreams are haunted by beating wings, and off in the distance, a dog barks incessantly through the night, and it's cool. And the horror is strongest there too. Like, honestly, the horror of the book. I mean, when you find out what happened to his wife and daughter, the way he takes revenge on Mad Dog Hawkins by, you know, killing him through electroshock therapy, claiming it's an accident, and then later learning that he was the one who killed his mother and then repressed the memory, and, you know, believed genuinely to himself that she had committed suicide, and then fully starts believing in the logic that she had about the spirit of the bat and, like, all these other things about the asylum, and how he ultimately, like, spoilers, ultimately dies in you know, an inmate in his own asylum, having scratched a binding spell into the floor of his cell with his own nails. It's legit.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with the part with Amadeus' story being the stronger story in this. I do like the Batman half of the story, because one of the reasons I really enjoy all of the Batman villains is because they're all in different ways reflections of his character. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, just makes the Batman story so much more interesting to me than, like, say, Superman.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Could you imagine if this was a Superman story? Come to the asylum, Clark. Clark blows it up.
So what I was expecting was, like, Batman meeting different members of the entourage and just, like, getting glimpses of, like, how each of them reflect back to him. And I don't feel like I got enough of that.
Yeah.
Same.
And then, like, so I was like, okay, well, when we got to Two-Face and they're talking about how they're treating him, I was like, okay, well, that's actually really cool and interesting. Am I going to get more of that with, like, the other villains? No. And then, like, we get 3 panels of Scarecrow. What the fuck?
Yeah, that was...
2 out of 10, not enough Scarecrow.
Well, because here's the thing. He's like, okay, let's pretend that the hour's up. And I'm expecting, like, oh my gosh, the villains are going to go out and get him. And I'm like... Nothing happens.
The only person who goes after, who he gets in a fight with, really, is Killer Croc.
That's it. That's it. There's not really much to it. It's just like... He
pushes Dr. Destiny down a staircase.
Well, it's kind of like the whole... Well,
that's like it.
Well, here's the thing. The premise is that it says the villains have run loose and they have taken over the asylum. That's a frightening in its own right. Why is it when he gets there, everybody's also relaxed and chill? It's kind of...
I mean, they want to go after him, but Joker keeps insisting that they have to do this his way. And
no, but, like,
right?
Okay, Batman goes in there. Like, he basically is just staying there.
Yeah.
And then so are the other people. But it doesn't seem like they're scared or anything. It's just like, nah, we're here. I don't feel the fear. Like, it's like these are, like, these are, like, supposedly insane men who've taken over an asylum. Like, there should be, like, much more fear going on right now. And it feels just like, no, this is just it. This is what's happened. And the Joker's like, yeah, hostage are gone. Have fun. I'm like, wow. This is
the frustrating part. Because I feel you there is, and I'm with you also, Sade. We get little snippets of different villains, but you almost wouldn't know some of them are there. Did you realize Tweedledee and Tweedledum were in the story?
What? No.
Yeah.
Where?
They are. They pop up in one panel in the background, and you see them together. And I only know this because I read the notes. Those 2 characters who are wearing helmets, and they have like a wire between them.
Oh my god.
That's Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Did you know Black Mask shows up in the story?
No.
No, because you can hardly see him in one panel. Dave very lavishly sets out certain scenes. And this is, I think there are strengths and weaknesses to Dave McKean's work here. The strength is that it really makes everything seem a lot more horrific and surreal, but you lose certain details. The way the opening scene of the asylum is described, when Joker throws open the doors and lets Batman in, it's way more. It shows way more pandemonium. There's like confetti and balloons and blood splashed everywhere. There's a figure that's hanging above a tiered wedding cake. It's a nurse with her throat cut, but she's hanging from the ceiling. But she's hanging in such a way that it devokes the Hanged Man card from the tarot. Mm-hmm. You get that same figure in the Dave McKean illustrations, but it's a vague, almost looks like just part of the asylum architecture figure of a hanged man with no cut throat, like it's just part of the architecture. And I'm like, I don't know, like he describes you seeing people in the background who are being, attacked by inmates, and you don't get that in McKean's illustrations.
But then his artwork lends amazingly well.
It so does
to the Arkham part, to Arkham's or Amadeus Arkham's story.
It really does.
It's just I almost feel like this shouldn't have been a Batman story.
Like, I think what happened was, because it sounds like Dave didn't want to draw a Batman story, so which is why we get why his art works so well for Amadeus' story, because he could disassociate enough from Batman to, I think, connect with that. Whereas like all the Batman stuff, he's like, I don't want to draw Batman.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I do love the way he interpreted some of the villains, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you think of his interpretations of the villains? Because, like, I don't know, I really like his Joker.
I do like his Joker. It's like...
Mm-hmm. I'll give him that. The Joker is really well done here.
I feel like he really wanted to just push the boundaries on Joker to make it his own thing. Mm-hmm. He definitely did. It is horrifying, and it's like... this might go into, like, one of the questions that I think Alex asked about, like, the different styles. If you compare Joker to some of the other characters, he is really fucking out there.
Yeah.
Like he just feels, just like looking at him, you feel insane. It's the best way I can describe him.
It does. He looks like the cover has Joker's face looming over the door of Arkham Asylum, like a superimposed, and it's frightening.
On your cover.
Well, on my cover, yes. I'm sorry.
But like then other characters, like Kayla mentioned, Two-Face. Like I feel like Two-Face was like when you first see him, I didn't even recognize him as Two-Face.
Same.
Right.
For what the story is going for, like the fact that he is turned into this kind of meek man who can't even decide if he has to go to the bathroom or not, and that's all because of the psychiatrist's fault at Arkham.
Yeah,
I like it for that, but then it's again, this is already set in a mythos. So it's kind of... But one of the things that's cool about Batman is you can play with that mythos a lot. I love the idea that Two-Face got broken down this far. And actually Two-Face, the moments they have with Two-Face are some of my favorites. Because I love the bit where he's looking at the moon and he goes, the moon, the moon's a coin, God flipped it and it landed scar side up, so it made the world. And I love how Professor Milo's like, God, I can't have a decent conversation with anyone in this place in response. And then, of course, at the end, Two-Face's coin is what ultimately decides Batman's fate. Yeah.
And I love and Two-Face gets the last moment where he gets that direct Lewis Carroll quote, who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards, and knocks the house of cards he's been building up over, which I thought was really cool.
But in the same breath, it's like the stakes don't feel as high in the Batman story.
There's a lot of spooky stuff and great symbology, but yeah, the stakes don't feel super high once Batman gets in there and the hostages.
At least not up until there's tension in there for the fight with Croc, but
yeah, Croc. I like how Croc looks less like a croc and more like a dragon. Like obviously there's a parallel because there's the statue of Saint Michael that Batman takes the spear of and stabs Killer Croc. Like, whoa, Batman, what? Are you the Michael Keaton Batman? Do you just kill people pell-mell?
Well, that's what I was kind of thought was going to start happening, that he was going to just start, like, killing some of the villains. Especially when he, like, pushed the poor guy down the stairs.
Yeah. Like I said, he pushed Dr. Destiny down the stairs, and I thought, wow, this Batman is way harsher than a lot of other Batman.
Like how I mentioned, I thought he would be like he'd end up like seeing himself reflected in these villains. Like maybe he would go. Well, he is mad. We're just gonna say Batman.
Yeah, because
he would. I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? Succumb to his madness and not wanting to acknowledge that these villains are a part of him. He like starts to off them.
Yeah,
that's what I thought was gonna happen. I thought that would have been fun.
That would have been fun. I do want to. I mean, I know we're gonna get back to some of the villains, like especially Joker, a little later. I have a really juicy tidbit from the notes, from Grant Morrison's notes about Joker, a way he was gonna do Joker that ultimately DC shot down.
He's gay?
No. It's not even that. Joker was originally going to be dressed as Madonna.
Ooh.
Not even like the Madonna, like the Virgin, like, you know, like the Virgin Mary. I mean, like the artist Madonna.
That's totally what I thought you meant. And
I thought that too.
Which was, it was him being really sly. And in the notes, it even says, like, I was alluding to, the fact that the mother figure is part of my weird, like, symbolic stuff in this story. Mothers, you know, come up a lot. So having Joker as a Madonna is a way to continue to play with that idea, but also to fucking like just have him Joker lampoon a popular figure, which is something he would do.
Yeah.
So he was originally gonna straight up be wearing like the, you know, the cone tits and everything.
That would have been me. Although, doesn't it get hinted that Joker might be not gay, but like bisexual?
Well, Joker is just a Joker is just
a Joker.
Joker is just a sexual
deviant
predator anyway. He's a sexual he's a deviant. He stands for all forms of deviancy. I love when the part where he's where Batman's talking to, you know, Dr. Adams, and she says, we actually believe the Joker reinvents himself every day. He might have a form of super sanity. I mean, just yesterday he thought he was the Baron Geed, the Voodoo Loa, and I was like, whoa, okay. Like, that's an interesting way to interpret Joker in this. Trying to think what other villains. So we have like 3 panels of Scarecrow who doesn't do anything. Clayface is basically a decomposing man who shows up at one point, because that is Clayface. There is a little bit with Mad Hatter, which makes sense. There's so much Lewis Carroll in this story. If he didn't pop up, I'd be shocked. They really strongly hint at the pedophile angle with him.
Yeah. There was I'm trying to word this. I think I don't know, when I think of the Batman portion, I'm kind of disappointed by it, which is why, like, when I think of the Amadeus Arkham portion, it's just so good. Like, the story, like, the artwork works so well with it. I like that even not everything's shown with the words, it's shown with the with like imagery and stuff like that, and it's just beautiful. The one good thing, I mean, I think Joker is probably the best part of the Arkham story. Like, I love the fact that the writing for how he speaks is just so manic, and it's in red and it's different. Although, maybe I'm wrong, but like the writing for each person is different.
Yeah, actually, for a lot of the characters, it is. Batman has, like, that's one thing I really like is, you know, Arkham's journals are all, you know, just illustrations or all the text. Batman has black word balloons with white text. Joker's is like red letters are splashed across the panels. Clayface's boxes look all rotten and festering. I think there's like a whimsical quality to, I'm looking at it now. Well, I will be looking at it in just a second. Yeah, because it's handy having the book right in front of you. Like the weird, like almost childlike text or whimsical text that's for Mad Hatter. Maxie Zeus has the blue word balloons with kind of Greek characters for the text. That was interesting. I do like that part of it a lot too. Gosh, there's so much. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know where to start or where to continue to, honestly. You know what? I'll tell you what. Let me tell you in Grant Morrison's own words real quick here what he was kind of some of the symbols he was aiming for in here. I will say, for an origin thing, he someone actually did come up with Arkham's story before he did, and he was just interpreting it. It was originally part of Justice League of America, and it was written by Len Wein, who, according to him, had written a few short and evocative paragraphs on the history of Arkham Asylum and it was here I learned of poor Amadeus Arkham, the hospital's founder, whose wife and daughter had been murdered by Martin Mad Dog Hawkins. In Wine's Précis, Arkham's madness is described as a result of the stock market crash of 1929. It occurred to me that having one's wife and daughter slaughtered by a man named Mad Dog might have been sufficient cause for a nervous breakdown. So I decided to explore and expand on the life of a throwaway character. From that, the seed of the story became A Serious House on Serious Earth, which in all honesty I wrote to impress Jim Clements. But he talks a lot about like the symbols he's kind of aiming for. The moon, the shadow, the mirror, the tower, and the mother's son are all factor a lot into this story. The first panel is the tarot card of the moon. The moon in particular is the big one that you see a lot. It's supposed to be like sort of it's representing the journey to an afterworld. You could spend a long time talking about the symbolic logic of this, and you could tell Grant Morrison was just having a blast doing all this nonsense. And I'm sure Dave McKean was too when he wasn't having to draw Batman. Because he seems like he enjoys himself when he's drawing the villains. And I don't think his Batman is terrible, his illustration of Batman. But yeah, Dave, I'm sorry.
I feel like Batman got the least amount of thought.
If it was just a story about the villains, even, it would have been a really compelling story. Mm-hmm. Even if Batman was just kind of there, like at the end or something, you know?
I do like that, for the most part, when we see Batman, he is that dark silhouette. But then when we get glimpses into, like, his vulnerability, like when they're playing that word association game.
Yeah.
When we look at his face, like when we get to see details of his face, you don't even see a mask. You just see the shadows of his face.
Right. That is kind of weird, huh?
So he feels very exposed, which he is. So I did like those details when it came to, like, the different panels with Batman.
Oh, definitely. What did you think of the bit where there's a bit in there where he's going through the asylum, like he's first gotten his start after the Joker tells him to run, and he's thinking back to the night his parents were killed, and he comes upon the same like convex mirror that Arkham did, the one that makes his face look all distorted. He punches the mirror and then proceeds to stab his own hand with the glass. Like that's crazy.
That is not a good idea, Batman. Like, someone will, like, trace your DNA and find out who you are that way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone here has the common sense enough to do that.
I'm sure there's, like, bloods everywhere.
Yeah, it's just part of the general blood mixed up all over the darn asylum. What do you make of the like toward the ending? So let's talk about a little bit about the ending real quick. The ending is it gets revealed that the current warden of the asylum, Cavendish, found Arkham's journal and the spell in Arkham's, like the spell scratched Arkham's cell, and connected it all and thought, oh my God, he really was alluding to the Batman. That's what, this bat that this symbolic bat that he was so afraid of was the Batman, and he proceeded to like buy into the whole thing and was pretty much the one who orchestrated all of it. He's even wearing a wedding dress as he's threatening Dr. Adams. He ultimately dies, but mainly by his own hand. So
I like that as a connection to the Batman's story.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how the two connect, that actually was a really good connection, and I did like that.
Mm-hmm.
I even like the fact that Cavendish becomes so obsessed with Arkham's story that he himself begins to evoke it by wearing a wedding dress, similar to how Amadeus wears his mom's wedding. Was it his mom's wedding dress, right?
Yeah, he wears his mother's wedding dress.
Okay, yeah.
Doesn't he put it on like right after his family's killed?
Yeah, right after.
So in the original, make of this what you will. This didn't make its way in the comic. It's implied, but it was more strongly overted in his original script. It was implied that the moment he snapped, he puts on the dress and in the original story proceeded to ritualistically cannibalize the bodies of his wife and daughter while wearing the wedding dress. That got dropped, but it's implied that it could have happened in the graphic novel.
Why would he do? What's the symbology there?
Well, if you want to talk about something else while I look it up, his rationale, I'm going to go to the notes again because that's always helpful.
Because, I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I like the idea, like, oh, he decided to start Arkham because his mom was insane, and then, but it doesn't click that insanity itself can be hereditary, and that he himself too suffers from this as well.
Mm-hmm. When we get to that point in the journal where that's being described, and then we learn that Cavendish was the one who released the prisoners, or the patients, I mean. I thought they were going to reveal, like, oh, he's a descendant of the Arkham family or whatever. It's like, no, it didn't go there. But I do want to say, like, I don't think Cavendish is wearing a wedding dress. He still has his coat, but there's this overlay of the dress, and the pattern does fade up into, like, where he's dying. I feel like that represents more like he's been possessed by this madness that possessed Arkham by the same madness. That's the way I read it.
That's actually really cool. I mean, I looking at it again, I can actually. Oh, you're right. You're totally right, because by the time he's actually, like, you know, fighting back against Batman,
you just kind of see the faint floral. Plus, like, the couple pages before that, he's not wearing that.
There's still. What's interesting is the parallel back, because he's wearing the stained. You see just panels of the stained lace after Dr. Adams, like, slits his throat with the razor, which is, like, also also fun and symbolic because of how Arkham killed his mother. With the razor and everything, like, just
that's
Cavendish.
That's why I feel it's like, oh, he was possessed by Arkham in some way, because that's how Arkham killed his mother, and that's kind of like where the start of his madness came from. That was then triggered by the death of his family, and so here's the end where someone kills it.
Right, it's good. I think the part that confuses me a little bit is Arkham was right. Sometimes it's only madness that makes us what we are, or destiny, perhaps. Batman even says. But there's a bit where Batman takes an axe and starts chopping at pipes, wires, stuff.
I thought that was him just, like, carving a way out for the villains, being like.
I think so. Has what I'm wondering is, has Batman, when he's doing this, has he kind of bought, because of everything he's seen, has he kind of bought into the weird symbolic ritualistic nature of the way people interpret reality in this place? Is he now working kind of with the mindset of the inmates? Because they could just leave at any time, honestly, but they don't. He says, "You're free, you're all free," and the Joker responds, "Oh, we know that already. What about you?"
And they don't even leave. Actually, I actually got a couple questions. I think, and they come from Slime Beast. And I think they're supposed to be jokes, kind of jokes, but there's a little, of course, there is a method to this madness. So.
As anything.
Once you.
Before we get into that, I found the bit, by the way.
Oh, go for it.
Page 35. This was originally a shamanic cannibal sequence of which only vague hints, suggestions, and shadowy threats remain. The original line was, "Later in the lavatory, choking and sobbing, I bring up the half-digested remains of my family." The cannibal scene was intended to show Arkham reverting to hardwired primordial behavior patterns as his psyche disintegrates. Early tribal societies often consume parts of their dead as a way of retaining something of the spiritual essence of the departed. That
in itself could also connect with in a psychology manner too, like how Freud says, like as that whole what is it? Like the Oedipus syndrome or whatever.
Yeah.
That every young boy has.
Right.
And then that connects with him going to that whole primal mindset. And why he would wear his mother's wedding dress as well. The Freudian and even Jungian like philosophies, Grant Morrison has stated, were very big influences for what were other things he wanted to throw into the story. And for that matter, there was something. Oh gosh, what was I going to say? I lost it. My brain it farted. And there was actually other things too that are interesting, like the hints of what's going to come, like. The dog that barks ceaselessly through the night is maybe a little bit of foreshadowing of Mad Dog Hawkins. And you know the part where they go into the asylum and it's just a cavalcade of different word balloons with things like millions of robins, which is, by the way, a direct reference to David Lynch's Blue Velvet, according to the notes. One of the lines I noticed is, Daddy, make him stop. He's hurting me. The dog's hurting me. Oh, God. Oh, God.
And according to Grant Morrison, he said, "Yeah, no, that was supposed to be sort of a ghostly echo in the cacophony of Arkham's daughter." Anyway, Slime Beast.
Okay, do we want to get to?
Sorry, See, here's the thing. Confusing and with fair criticism. I love this because it is surreal. I mean, that you're talking to someone who really loves Paranoia Agent because it is a surreal, thought-provoking series. And that's what I love about this, too.
See, I love surreal stuff, too. I'm a huge fan of the surreal. That's why I love the Amadeus Arkham stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's the most surreal part of it.
And the part where the Batman stuff gets really good is when the Arkham stuff bleeds into it.
Exactly. So Dave McKean's artwork is very surreal. It's like,
I love it.
And it's great. I just don't think it fits with the Batman story.
Right.
So do we want to get into questions, or do we have any
thoughts you want to add to that one, Sade, or any of that?
I think McKean's art was perfect for this type of story if he had wanted to draw Batman.
If he wanted to have drawn it.
I mean, again, he said he was willing to draw Batman, but he felt like it sacrificed his artistic integrity. According to Grant Morrison, according to his notes, that could have been a joke, but he was definitely not willing to draw Robin, which I totally. Isn't it nice that Robin got spared any of the horror that was this graphic novel, though?
Thank God. So for questions, Slimies. Again, I think this is a couple of these are jokingly, but there is one that
he's always deadly serious. What are you talking about?
But there's one that it's slightly a joke, but I think there's again a bit method to it. The first one is: should there be an Arkham Asylum of graveyards for infamous criminals people would dig up or make touristy trips to visit?
I mean, isn't there already?
Exactly. So
there's probably several cemeteries like that. You think of anywhere they bury a famous person.
Oh yeah.
But famous criminal, that would be interesting. An Arkham cemetery would just be where Batman goes and if Batman killed people, it's where they'd end up.
And then
but then if they keep coming back as zombies, Arkham Asylum, Arkham Cemetery needs to be shut down. Everybody they bury there just comes back.
They never die.
It doesn't even matter if I kill them; they just return.
The second one is alternately, if Arkham were real, would you need to have a mental issue to want to work there? And actually,
I feel like you would.
And actually, there is something there. By the way, I feel like a lot of the people. Psychologists or psychiatrists that do end up working there do tend to have a mental issue.
Do we want to do? Well, I mean, look at Dr. Cavendish.
Well, Dr. Cavendish, but then Harley Quinn eventually.
Jonathan Crane,
exactly.
who did work as a doctor at Arkham for a while before he became the Scarecrow.
Yeah, so there is kind of I feel like. I'm not sure if maybe you have to have a mental issue to go in there, but I think once you go into Arkham, you start to develop some mental issues.
Well, I mean, and I think that's one of the things I like most about this story is it gives the unreliable narrator Amadeus Arkham is there could be something either hereditary or even influential. It could be something hereditary in his line about madness that he's scared of. What if there's actually some baleful influence of the house and the Arkham, like the Arkham property itself? Much in the same way that, like, some haunted houses are supposed to, influence people. Like, there's actually something about the place that fosters the these delusions and these. Well,
look at the title: A Serious House on Serious Earth.
Exactly. There's a reason it has that. There is one other thing I want to talk about, maybe once we get past the questions, and that's at the very end, the very, very end of the book, when you just have the sort of little quote profile things that are like for each person in their own text. You got Batman. They're sort of almost like dossiers, but they're not really. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like those. But I'm sorry, before I got sidetracked. Here we go. The Serious House on Serious Earth. The subtitle was taken from Philip Larkin's poem, Churchgoing. That's all I see on it. The tagline, A Serious House on Serious Earth.
Oh.
So it's worth looking up, I guess.
So, do you have anything to add to that part?
With what people who go there, who work there, decide to work there are somewhat crazy? I think there's, if we're going to look at it that way, I would say, everyone, if we go with everyone here is mad. Everyone has the potential for a little crazy, and just being in an environment like Arkham would definitely help that fester.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's how I kind of see it.
I mean, I've long said that Arkham does not seem like an environment conducive to anyone's mental health, whether they're healthy or do have some sort of mental disorder. It just seems like you can't, like, Arkham is just a terrible place. It is a sinkhole of evil. It fosters madness. It claimed the lives of the people who built it ultimately, and it's just going to keep taking other people. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I keep wanting to go on with certain things, and then I feel like I've been derailing a lot, and I don't know why. I
think it's there's a lot you want to say about this, and it's hard to stick to one train of thought, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's really all over the place. Like, there's so much nonsense. I'm like, I want to talk about the symbology of the moon, or the Pisces and the clownfish, and what about the tunnel of love that keeps coming up from Arkham's Nightmares? It's actually based on an incident from Grant Morrison's youth, where he was in a fun house and he was afraid to go into the tunnel of love because even as a kid he had ideas about sex and venereal disease that made him not want to go through that curtain, and his dad had to come and take him out, he's just verbatim retelling that as 7-year-old Amadeus Arkham.
Okay, so I actually looked up church going, what the line is.
Yeah.
So a serious house on serious earth kind of represents church. This is how the line goes. A serious house on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies.
Ooh.
And that much can never be obsolete, since someone will forever be surprising, a hunger in themselves to be more serious, a gravitating with it to this ground. So from what I'm looking at some ideas of it, but the idea is churches itself serve as there's something important because it serves a need that we need, or it satisfies a hunger within ourselves. And I feel like that actually kind of corresponds with Arkham Asylum, that not that it satisfies a hunger in itself, but it kind of serves as a place where people do serve their compulsions or go with their compulsions.
Right. And it's interesting because there's sort of there's several almost religious and metaphysical mythological references that keep popping up within Arkham. I mean, heck, someone surrounded the entire asylum with a ring of salt to try and keep the Batman in, which I thought was another really cool detail. What other questions?
So we got Alex Hatzberger asked a couple questions.
Hi, Alex.
David McKean's artwork varies wildly in this comic, from surreal and horrific imagery to mundane, realistic comic-style drawings, even into mixed media. Do you think that aids the story or distracts from it?
We did touch on it a little bit earlier. In some cases, I feel like some scenes are confusing, and others are abundantly as confusing as they need to be.
I think it's a bit of both. In just there were some pages where my eye wanted to travel across the whole book, but it was supposed to go down the page.
Same. I had that same feel too.
I could be wait, reading this wrong, go back. But I do like how the different styles, where when we get to see Gordon, he's in that very realistic style. And then when we go into the asylum and we see Joker, and he's so, like I said earlier, out there, I think it for that represents where in reality different people stand. Or where by reality I mean their level of sanity where they stand. So what I mean? Where Gordon, he's down to earth man. He knows what's up. He's got his shit together. And when Batman is there, he's more grounded. He's got that same style. But then when he goes into the asylum, he's this eerie silhouette that almost looks like this ghoul of a shadow. And then obviously Joker is the most insane, so he's the most out there in design and style.
Oh yeah.
And then the fact that Batman is left in shadow can be interpreted in many different ways. It's does that mean that I think the reason he's left in shadow is because Dave McKean's oh God, I don't want to draw Batman. But I think also it could be, and benefit of doubt, I think it could be represented that we are not supposed to know what his sanity is for sure. Is he really insane? Is he actually grounded in reality? So.
Speaking of, no, go ahead.
I'm
flipping through the book again and comparing it to the notes. Did anybody else notice that in the very beginning, when Ma Arkham's in bed, did you notice the two puppies on either side of her?
No. Actually, no, I didn't.
I didn't notice that until the script told me to look for them, and now I see them. And that's supposed to be the reason those two wolfhounds are there. They're supposed to be
I did notice them. I thought they were creepy.
Aren't they? It's sort of the idea that symbolically she's the Hecate of Arkham's life, whereas his daughter is the she like his mother's the hag, his wife is the mother, and his daughter's the virgin. The three women are the three witches, the three fates of his life.
Oh.
So the two dogs are supposed to help give the reader sort of a interpretation that's going on. But it's not a detail I picked up on until I looked for it. So
yeah. Speaking of storylines, Grant Morrison is known for his far-out comic storylines. Helped to redefine Arkham Asylum for the rest of the Batman series. What parts of the story do you think lend themselves to comic-style continuity, and which do you think are best left within this graphic novel? I mean, I guess the idea is which are better for, like, if these stories are best part of the Batman mythos, or
are we talking about what works for the sake of the greater Batman continuity, and which is best left in this story?
Yeah, as it's just its own graphic novel story.
Well, it's interesting to think how much this did impact the greater canon, because this story, or at least Grant Morrison's interpretation of Arkham's backstory, became sort of the official backstory. Like, from that point forward, people just talked about, crazy Dr. Arkham. He did all this stuff. And then it gets referenced again and again in, we have the Arkham Asylum video game.
And that was definitely influenced from a Serious House on Serious Earth.
There's one of the Easter egg references in there. There's a statue of Arkham's wife in a garden that you find in the video game, but the head is missing. Mm-hmm. And the head is lying at the feet of the statue, and someone over the top of the plaque that has her name has scratched the words "Mad Dog" in the video game. Isn't that cool?
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Not to mention, you find throughout the game, you find you can scan these different symbols on the floor that are just scratchings of symbols, and in the center of these like symbol etchings, you find a scarab beetle. The scarab being a prominent symbol that comes up a lot in some of the references here. Mm-hmm. The scarab and the moon. And every time you scan these, you get a ghostly voice that talks to you and describes itself as the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. And you get this story kind of retold to you. But over time, you hear the spirit talking about things that happened more in the present, and you start to wonder, is Arkham's ghost still here, or is someone carrying on Arkham's work and just imitating him, much like Dr. Cavendish? So definitely there's parts of this that carried forward into future media. Mm-hmm. But I guess this is more of an opinion one. What seems like it's good to carry forward, and what is best left here?
I mean, the thing about Batman, as you mentioned before, with the mythos, it can be reinterpreted in so many different ways that it's hard for me to say, oh, this should be in its own thing and this should stay with the mythos. It just feels like it, no matter, like, it's part of the mythos no matter what. It's not exactly, it's official. But I think it's an interpretation, just like there's so many Batman interpretations. Like there's so many interpretations of the Joker, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea that the Joker reinvents himself all the time.
I do really like that.
Yeah,
I would like to see that again. I think, like how David mentioned earlier, when Grant Morrison started this, it sounded like he took to Amadeus's story first, and from there came the rest with involving Batman. So I think, like, putting Amadeus's story aside, this is just another interpretation of Batman and his entourage. Cool. Mm-hmm. It's always cool to see it from a new artist, from a new writer.
Right.
But the stuff with Amadeus that he built on, I think because that is more original and it was adding to the wide, I'll just call it canon. Because that was new and interesting, I think that's why that specifically is what other people latched onto, and we start to see in other interpretation.
Right.
That was the strongest part of the story.
Definitely. And I think one thing that I glad didn't really carry forward is and we have the animated series to thank for this. Humanizing Batman more was not really a big part of this so much. Batman's just kind of there. He's a figure. There's stuff about him that, you get a little bit of his profile, but but there's supposed to be moments where you see the human side of him leak out, and those are few and far between. But I kind of like that by the end of the story, he's giving in a weird way, he's realized the best way to help these people is to let them be themselves. Like when he gives Two-Face back his coin. Mm-hmm. And says, let's let him decide my fate. He's just rebuilt what someone tried to tear down and rebuild in someone else's image. That said, I kind of prefer the Batman of, I'm glad that, I think the Batman in that case works best isolated in this story where it's very centered on the idea of embracing quote unquote madness, and I don't think this is necessarily the best Batman to carry forward canonically.
I agree. I mean, Batman wasn't as strong a part of this story,
right,
as other ones. So yeah, and he didn't have. For me, it wasn't much of a personality, to be honest.
Also, Clayface as basically a decomposing, rotting man. That neat idea, but kind of glad it was only in this story for a bit of creepy symbolic stuff, creepy imagery about him. Like he was powerful, now he's decaying, Mm-hmm. It'd be a little weird. Is like you can't really have Clayface being you can't have Clayface be someone you can fight unless he's like now his whole interpretation is a disease carrier, a pestilent character.
In the next questions, username 159 has a couple.
Oh, cool.
Do you believe that Arkham is actually cursed, or it's just convenient plot?
Arkham the person or Arkham the facility?
I'm thinking the facility because I think it's the idea. Because remember, he writes in the curse in his own hand, like his own fingernails.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of.
Go ahead.
It is kind of eerie that his mom latched on to the vision of the Bat, and the Bat became a significant figure later on. Just saying.
I don't know. I don't think it. You know what? I don't think the idea is it's cursed or it's not cursed. I think the ambiguity of it just adds to the creepiness of it.
Yeah.
I feel for me, within the world of this comic, I don't say Arkham is so much cursed as it is haunted by, not like by a spirit or a ghost, but just like by actual madness. Mm-hmm. And I say that because it goes from Arkham's mother to him, and then through all of its patients over the years, and to then Cavendish, because we see him like possessed with that lace. That's just how I interpreted it. So,
well, I actually do really like that interpretation of it, and I'm going to accept it as headcanon now.
Okay.
Because yeah, you're right. I hadn't noticed that it had faded in the other panels.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Were there any others from username?
There's one more. Thoughts on Arkham's family collective insanity, or Amadeus Arkham's in particular? They're
the only two members of the Arkham family that are.
But I mean, Harriet wasn't his daughter.
Yeah, Harriet was fine.
No, I mean, remember she?
Wasn't she having nightmares?
Yeah, she was having nightmares. So I think she might have been inherited too. I think that was a sign of it.
Oh well, yeah, that's true. Because young Arkham suffered nightmares too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So I think it's the idea. If she would have lived on, she probably would have suffered the same as Amadeus.
I think you can either interpret it as there was, something in this family bloodline that made them susceptible to going crazy. And then you could also interpret it as like, okay, well, maybe it is something in the house, in the land, and because they lived there, I don't know.
No, I mean
it could be either way you want it to be.
Exactly. That's the love. That's the beauty of ambiguity. There doesn't have to be a major explanation. You could kind of interpret it however you most enjoy it. Honestly, regardless, I think Arkham certainly left a legacy behind him, and maybe not the best one for the people of Gotham City, but like one of those necessary evils, huh? Mm-hmm. That said, like I started to mention earlier, what did you think of the little dossiers at the end? The little, character writings?
I'm not going to lie. One of the things I did struggle with is trying to read them because they're written in the handwriting style of the characters. And some of them are not that easy to read. I'm not going to lie. I kind of struggled a little bit at times with Joker's writing.
Mm-hmm. I did actually. I was going to complain about it, but then I was like, maybe I'll just keep that to myself. like how we went into like certain characters have their distinct lettering or bubbles. I think that's great, but also be mindful that like Joker has a lot to say, and that font is not easy to read.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
especially like on top of the art, where in some places like it's so busy.
And I get. Here's the thing. I like it, and I don't like it at the same time. Like, I like the fact that it is hectic, and actually having it over that makes it more hectic to show his insanity. But it's true. He talks a lot, and it makes sense. Joker is a talker.
Yeah, I guess in the sense where, like, you'll, even if you would hear him clearly, you would not understand him 100% because you can't understand the Joker's madness. I guess if you interpret it that way, like, oh, I can't read because I just wouldn't understand him anyway, fine, okay. But, I don't know, maybe if it was, like, a tad.
Yeah, I kind of would.
I don't know.
I think it could have been a little slight, like, clean enough that we could read it. And that was the thing with the dossiers. Like, I tried to read some of them, but then some of them I'm like, this is too busy. I'm struggling here.
I managed to read them all. Eventually, it was a little bit of a struggle.
I didn't. I mean, I kind of read them, but for the most part, I kind of looked at them as a visual piece instead of something to read. So I really like them.
Yeah, as a visual piece, it's great.
I gotta say, Killer Crocs spoke volumes to me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you just look at it as this, like, visual piece, it's like, damn, that is so cool. I also love that, like,
Black Mask is just pure black.
But that Batman and Joker's has this piece of lace, like, across both of them that they share because they share their madness because they complete each other.
They do. I mean, that's why Joker is Batman's greatest villain. It's because they're mirrors of each other.
And that was the idea behind Joker, because usually when you create an antagonist, the best antagonist tends to be someone who is a mirror of the protagonist.
Right.
And it works. He works very well in that way. It's like they're to go on a even more like Batman kind of joke with Two-Face. They're two sides of the same coin.
I really love. And when you read them, I really love how like bizarre it is. Like Joker at first is trying to be almost like Shakespearean with what he's writing, and he quickly devolves into writing things like, fill the churches with dirty thought, introduce honesty to the White House, write letters in dead languages to people you've just never met, paint filthy words on the foreheads of children. Things like that.
Yeah.
Just it's great. It's great little insights into these characters. Two-Faces is really good. How it's like split down the middle with contrasting words, meeting at the bottom with "God bless America." And the Professor Milo one cracks me up. Just I don't know how many times I have to say this. I am sane. I am perfectly and completely sane. I shouldn't be in here at all. There's been a terrible mistake. I don't know much about Professor Milo, but according to Grant Morrison, he was a character that invented He was a throwaway Batman villain that showed up at one point that invented either a gas or a toxin that actually caused insanity.
Oh,
this is like Silver Age stuff. So
okay,
he was affected by it himself and then sent to Arkham. The idea here is that it wore off and he's sane again, but now he's stuck there.
That sucks.
Oh, poor guy. I mean, he should be in prison, not.
Well, and that brings up the endless debate. A lot of these people shouldn't even be in Arkham. Most of them should be in Blackgate.
Oh yeah.
We had this conversation on Undercooked Analysis with Brian Ward and Dr. Andrea Lamendi of the Arkham Sessions podcast. Which, by the way, for any Batman fans out there, and especially if you grew up with the animated series like we did, you probably would get a kick out of hearing them talk about and psychoanalyze the characters of Batman the Animated Series. So that's the Arkham Sessions podcast. Hey, you're good friends with the show.
We should have brought him on for this. I'm kind of...
Maybe we should have, but, oh, man. I don't know. I don't... any closing thoughts?
None that I can think of. I mean, that's it for me. I've said my piece.
So have I.
Thank you for suggesting them, David. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for agreeing to read it and being here to discuss it and share your thoughts. I had a great time. I feel a little unhinged though. Well, after all that.
Luckily, we're gonna keep going with the insanity theme, which I'm
and buildings that might be cursed down to their very foundation.
I'm excited for this one. So our next work of literature we're going to read is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I am so excited because I have seen the movie and I have seen the series. I have not read the book. So I'm looking forward to this.
I think this will be fun.
Well, if we stay in the dark any longer with just a candle, we might go a little mad ourselves. So,
hey, if people want to find our individual projects,
we probably.
Where can they find us? Obviously, if you're listening to this, you're already familiar, hopefully, with Creative Horror, the hub of this macabre wheel, if you will. Many other podcasts exist there, including my own Midnight Marinera and the Undercooked Analysis podcast. You can also hear me and Kayla on another podcast, which Kayla is about to mention to you right now.
This is on the Benview Network. We do a Disney podcast, or rather animation podcast, called Animusings, where we review a Walt Disney animated feature monthly in chronological order. We just finished the Jungle Book, and our next one is the Aristocats. So
it is a far cry from the horrible, horrible dark material we have just read in this episode.
Yeah, so if you want something a little more lighthearted, you can listen to that. Sade's been on a few, or no, Sade's been on one, but Sade's going to be on another.
Eventually.
Soon.
I don't remember which ones.
We can talk about that.
Extension, I don't know what else.
But if you want to hear us hear Sade,
we already talked about the 3 best characters anyway.
Yes. Okay. So if you want to hear us, if you enjoy hearing all 3 of us talk, you can hear us talk more on 3 Caballeros episode.
But if you're in the mood for more dark shit and in the mood for some murder.
The
Witching Hour on creativehorror.com is coming back this month. I think it'll be the week after this episode goes out. And we're going to talk about Ted Bundy. And we're going to talk about people's murder plots that they have submitted to us. If you're hearing this and the day of or a couple days after this episode goes out, you can email us your murder plot, your perfect murder plot, and it might still be in time for us to talk about it in the episode. But yeah, we're going to just talk a whole lot of murder to start our new year off.
I mean, how else do you want to start the new year? So
exactly
with murder, yay! I'm so excited for this episode. So like,
start 2019 off right with murder.
Dun dun dun.
Man, this place is giving me the willies. I keep thinking I see scarab beetles and giant bats, and I hear a dog barking, or maybe that's just Gracie snorting. And there's this weird clown. There's this weird clown leering at me from the background. He keeps calling me Sweet Cheeks. We should probably leave. You want to blow that candle out? But I don't want to go among mad people, Alice remarked. Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad. How do you know I'm mad, said Alice. Oh, you must be, said the cat, or you wouldn't have come here.